Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and you are the co host on this channel where we talk all things tabletop role playing games. Sometimes we get really deep and serious, sometimes sinister. But now, this week, we're talking about the aftermath, the happily ever after. The heroes have won the day, and then now what? Of course, as always, a lot of these ideas are pulled from inspirations, pulled from just things that happen happen every time that we are here. Like maybe there's a holiday or an event or something happens in a public zeitgeist that allows us to gives us opportunity to be inspired. And as a side effect, of course, it's that sometimes we are very much stuck for ideas. So usually it's feast or famine. We have too many ideas, and we can never put them into our games, or we don't have any ideas at all. And so the subtext of the show is that we can always be inspired by something. And of course, as we have all of our co-hosts have their great ideas as well, we join in. So today on Trope Tuesday, we're going to talk about a ton of very common tropes when it comes to defeating the big evils in the world and what happens next after that point. Because I think there's a great space to be inspired by having a story where it begins at the end. And I did mention I still don't know the title of the book that Brandon Sanderson has written, where the story starts where the main character killed everything. Hey, wait, what's going on there, guys? Thank you very much for being part of the show. Z is here, Zamora and Wayne, and of course, our ever so present moderators, Tesla and Deadman. Now, just to let you guys know that recently I've been promoting Level Up 5e, which is a project that I helped work on through N-World, and I've been released to allow you guys to be given the information that the Kickstarter right now will start in October 5th. So it's a little ways off. I mean, in within the blogosphere, it's a little ways off, but for me, I feel like it's finally going to be here. It's literally going to be advanced 5th edition. So if you join the Discord, there's a link there. Of course, you can go to levelup5e.com and check that out. Be careful, because if you just type in level up, you'll just get a ton of information and videos on tabletop games about how to level up your character. That's not exactly what it is. And no, it's not Pathfinder, but you can find out all the information if you go over to levelup5e.com. And okay, that's enough of that. So tropes for the aftermath. So we're imagining the death of a dragon, the routing of a great army, the destruction of a grand wizard, the destruction of an invading force, or whatever the case may be. But now our heroes have saved the day, or maybe even our player characters are in the shadows of the real heroes who may have sacrificed themselves or moved on to greener pastures, but the great evil is dead. And there are a number of, I think, pretty common tropes that happen during this period of time through rebuilding and creating a new regime. I mean, for one, the big trope is big bad heroes are the new leaders, right? And it could be. It sounds really familiar. I'm not going to. I'm not going to disagree with you. The Rhythm of War, the novel by Brandon Sanderson. I bet that's it. I bet that's it. I don't know why I can't remember. I think it's probably because I listened to Brandon Sanderson too, and he talks about a number of his novels a lot of times on his YouTube videos, and so it all jumbles in the head. But yeah, there is one where there was literally generations of warriors that were trained to defeat the big evil, and the main character accidentally kills, the big bad evil guy, and walks away, and everyone's like. like, well, what about our society? It's like, who moved my cheese? For those who don't know, there is this psychological issue with people that like they don't want their cheese moved. In other words, it's no matter how bad things are for people in their life, change sometimes is so fearful that people don't want that change to happen because it's the unknown, and a whole economy and society could be built around the idea of the big bad evil. You know, there were American slaves that didn't want to be free because they didn't know what was going to happen next. You know, what do we do? Where do we go? Uh, Language, fashion, arts, just survival. What happens next? And so some people don't like their cheese moved. And if you have a whole economy built around defeating the big bad evil guy, let's say maybe you're a blacksmith and you've been forging weapons in this great battle, and now that it's over, you're just like, okay, who's going to pay me now? They had the coffers open as all the nobles and rich merchants or whatnot were paying me goo gobs of sacks upon sacks of coin to you know equip their armies. But if we don't need them, what do I do now? Now, of course, there are many people who say, well, why don't you find something else to do, like making plowshares, swords to plowshares, right? But initially, a lot of people don't. It's very difficult to change your mindset about that. So I would say one big trope is um, heroes become leaders, and not every hero is necessarily qualified to be the big bad leader. To be the pinnacle of what society should be. But that's often a very common trope as well, where yeah, maybe the person with the cape or the sword or the spells or the bravest people should be the leader because everyone raises their fists in the air and they're like, "Yeah, I believe in them," and they might not be qualified to lead. Uh, and that can be very apparent when even in a modern context. So I think that's a common trope. Plura says, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. I don't know where that quote is from. I've heard it plenty of times, but I don't know where it's from. But that may be another thing as well, where the it we talked about this yesterday, of course, that idle hands are a issue when it comes to not having a focus to put your aggression towards. So you're going to have a society with a lot of people who are battle hardened. Oh, it's from the book of Isaiah. I did not know that. I've heard that reference made plenty of times, but I never knew that. Or no one's ever pointed out to me. Thank you very much there, Palora. I appreciate that. The idea that you have these battle hardened individuals who now have to accommodate themselves to a peaceful or maybe a society that needs to be rebuilt, and that's a huge issue right there. Another great trope is the envious one. Envious ones. There. Oh, Tesla says it is from Isaiah 2:4 and Micah 4:3. And I work with a Micah. I've known a number of Micahs throughout my life. It's a religious name. And a bunch of J named individuals, Josiah, Joseph, et cetera, et cetera. Zamar says, I think Steven Universe does this well. The boy grows up always being needed to solve people's issues and literally died. And then Steven Universe Future shows him break down because, okay, and the comment has to keep going on. There is this notion that, like, what do you do afterwards? Like, what do you do after the fact? And the envious one, the person who's jealous of the big heroes who save the day, is a common trope. The sycophantic politicians are another one. The people who want to keep their power but were pretty much useless in the fight against the big evil are like, well, listen, you need me to keep people in check, and I have no other skills except to talk out the side of my neck and whatnot. So that those individuals are needed. Zamar's comment continues: nobody needs him to be the savior anymore, and everything is peaceful. Yeah, there are a few troublemakers, but nobody's hurting anyone. Heck, he even kills someone in the trauma. Say, kids, for kids, that's terrible. I never knew that about Steven Universe, but you know what? The idea that, like, where do you put your aggression at? Where does it go? Now, if we take stereotypical samurai or even knighthood, where you may have tourneys and schools that train each other and fight against each other to kind of have a focus for aggression is a possibility. But there's other things too, like there's the trope of uh, evil isn't dead; it's just resting. It's not, it's not dead yet. It's the hero. The hero strikes the blow against evil and turns their back, but it still has a little bit of breath left in them, and that is a very common trope, especially one if we start to mix that in with the sycophants that are trying to destabilize what the heroes are doing as well, because of course big bad heroes are going to be the most popular individuals after the fall of evil, and the threat of, is evil still around? Do we go up north of Westeros and build the wall to stop the onslaught of evil? And how many people are like, nah, evil's not around anymore? But you have that core group of people that are like, no, there really is still evil, and we have to be prepared, and we have to, they have their basement where they're prepping the entire time, and whatnot. Hey, Kylie, thank you very much for being here. The So you do have that kind of trope: the person or peoples who won't let the evil go, the ones who are banging the drum that we're not done yet, and that can be a little bit that can put the players in a precarious position, because on one hand they may know the truth, assuming that the player characters know most of the information involved. They know the dragon is dead, they know the necromancer has been destroyed, they know the cult's trying to open up a portal to the lower planes have been killed off and whatnot, so they might know. But on the other hand, maybe they don't want to lull the population into too much comfort, because if they do that, they understand that it's a possibility that if people are too comfortable, they're going to leave the door open for at least another great evil to step in. And yeah, like in the Discord, sorry, Deadman did put in Rhythm of War, epic fantasy written by American Arthur Grant, Brandon Sanderson, in the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive series. Yeah, I think that's it. Proceed by Oathbreaker, Kaladin, The Way of Kings. I think he's got another, just released yet another new book and whatnot. He releases huge chunks on audio form too, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, Zamara says, I actually play with that in my game. I have an entire nation that is run by a religious order that is constantly on the hunt for any shadow, real and otherwise. Yeah, proctors and Spanish, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. And how easy would it be for like a religious order who are given instructions either from real otherworldly voices, or maybe people in religious power who are saying like, hey, as long as I peddle emotion, I can stay in power for a very long time. I mean, we all know that politicians and political leaders, people that want to stay in power, peddle emotion more than facts. They want you to be scared or angry or jealous, or um, uh, they want you to be envious. They want your emotion to fuel you, and lots of people are going to step in there. Yeah, absolutely. Like Deadman says, Warhammer 40K has that with the Imperial Inquisition. Got to keep looking, got to keep hunting for evil, and yet it'll never run out. Yeah. Yeah, Kylie's like, that's how we get religious liches. Yeah, yeah. Or we turn those same powerful entities into our leaders and whatnot, which might be a thing. Also, some other tropes that may come up are, it's for at least on the PC side is too much responsibility. Getting pulled in too many directions. Players are like, "Yeah, we killed the dragon," wiping their hands and the blood off the sword and taking the gristle off the hammer and whatnot. Like, we're done, and everyone's looking at the PCs like, "No, you're not. Did you look over your shoulder at the blasted landscape you left behind? Like, we need we what was mentioned yesterday. We talked about looters and mob justice being a thing, and if do the player characters walk away from that, like, well, that's not our responsibility, or do they try to stop the looting and the mass killings? Do they step in to try to stop the religious sects that are still hunting for quote unquote the great evil within society? And the PCs are like, "Oh, yo, you got to calm down because this isn't right." And how much respect is given to the player characters even after they stopped the great evil? And also, the thing is, they actually might be true. It might not be as true as taking innocent people and burning them or torturing them at the stake to send a message, but there really may be evil lurking in the shadows, ready to take over. And what a strange but actually kind of cool way for evil to take a foothold by reinforcing peace and harmony. There we love to see our fiendish monsters, red skinned, horns, flames, evil, disgusting. But a lot of evil comes to us with smiles and golden halos and loving embraces and peace and tranquility. And literally, the PCs that are walking around all armed and armored and looking for the next evil thing, the bad guys might be manipulating society. Like, look at them, they're just warmongers. Why don't you just relax a little bit, put down the swords? You don't need all these fortresses and walls. We can take all that down and just open the doors and be peaceful. See how peaceful everything is? Don't you see the butterflies and hear the music and smell the jasmine in the air or something? Drinking mint julep on the back porch. Isn't this great? I don't know what jasmine smells like, and I know what mint is, but I've never had a mint julep. But it sounds peaceful to me. It sounds very tranquil, sitting there on the back porch with your feet up in the lake and taking a nap under the sun. And evil's like, yeah, they're nice. Let's give them some foot massages so we can take over, something like that. Palora's like, how much XP do I get for building a barn? You know what? I s- I'll take your joke and sarcasm, and I'll raise you even another one. I think it would be pretty awesome to mechanically figure out a way to rebuild a society, like whether it involves rebuilding barns and schools and fixing fences and uh, um, finding kids that are lost in the woods and corralling herds of cattle or something like that. Like, I don't know. I think there's a way to mechanically tie things together. I mean, in Dungeons and Dragons, you could tie hit dice, recovery of hit dice to, I don't know, call it bonds or ties or tethers or anchors, although that sounds pretty bad. How about drive? You could call it drives, and you have to have a number of drives, and those drives are things that if you interact with them, you regain something for your PC, and that might be opening up a school or o- you know ensuring that a trade route is open and free or something like that. So I think there's a way to do it. My character wants to be a midwife. Okay, well, every time you help a child give birth, you get your 4 hit dice back or something, or thereabouts, something like that. Deadman says actually the experience points would be for the reward of bettering the lands, and I agree. Like, you could tie. It might not be destroying the big bad evil any longer. It might be, yeah, you got to destroy the evil to allow the lands to get better. In other words, right? Like, if you ignore society eating itself from the inside, oh, you don't get experience points. But if you, it would be essentially you could tie it to milestone experience as well. Milestone might be expanding territory or preventing infighting and whatnot. All right, so Zamara's got a long one here. I will read this out. Thank you there, co-host. Another thing that shows up in Shield Hero, the anime, haven't heard of that one either. You defeat the giant evil magic dragon. What do you do with the body? The hero's answer, it's dead. Leave it to rot. Yeah, that's not too smart. This leaves excess magic in the ground and literally creates the next problem, superpowered scavengers that start slaughtering the nearby townsfolk, which someone else has to clean up. Yeah, I still think that's a great setting, setting issue from you all of our gigantic, colossal, kaiju style enemies out there, Terras, dragons, giants, even most for the majority, most giant sized monsters, even though they're called giant, gargantuan sized monsters, after they're dead, like, what do you do? What do you do? Hey, what's up there? By the way, guys, side note, Run Right Play. Hey, Keel, what's going on there? Thank you very much for popping in. Please check out Run Right Play. I know I mentioned a number of people's avatars on the show, but they're actual real content creators. So support those content creators. They're brilliant. Anyway, so Run Right Play says drives are literally part of a free little supplement I made called Banners. Yeah. Goes on to say, also, hey, from down under, walking me doggos. Oh, hey, what's going on? I'm glad you're able to be part of the show. I'm here. It's 6 a.m. in the morning here in the States, so you are a day ahead. I don't understand time, uh, how time works, but I believe you're ahead of us at the moment there, and I'm glad I could be in your ear, and the rest of us as well. So that's awesome there. But yeah, check out Run Right Play. Run Right Play has a zine you can check out. And actually, if you go over to his channel, he can tell you all about that and designing banners with the Jarl DM, Lloyd Collins as well. Is it done? Let me know in the chat, by the way. Pelor says Numenera has a ton of community stuff in it. The core rules are 2 books. The second book is primarily community stuff and crafting stuff. Ooh, I love Numen. I love the setting of Numenera, and I believe Numenera now is 5th edition compatible, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that kind of flew under the radar. Deadman says the mint julep is a bourbon cocktail best known for being the signature drink of the Kentucky Derby. It's a drink composed of bourbon, sugar, mint, and crushed ice. What? Well, thank you. And I would drink that. I've never had a mint julep, but I do know that it's real close because Kentucky's like 2 hours south from here. It's a hop, skip, and jump away. So, yeah. Yeah, Run Right Play is like, yeah, it is 6 p.m. Tuesday. 6 p.m. So, okay, 12 hours. So, you're cool. You're all right there, Keel. That is awesome. Yeah, and join in whenever you can. As a matter of fact, oh man, we have to do some videos together. We have to because I love it. Wayne is like, I prefer a mojito myself. There's so many drinks. We could do a whole series on drinks and stuff. Oh, Blood and Ink. That's it. Blood and Ink playtest version is delayed, coming soon. Okay. All right. Yeah, for those who don't know, there's the playtest for Blood and Ink is about players. It's not about hit points. It's about your house and the machinations of one house fighting another. And I think there is, as long as we, if you want to D&D eyes building a society, if we scrape off all of the serial numbers, and if you are out there and you want to be a creator, game creator and whatnot, a lot of times we have to remove our brain away from the classic player character hit points armor class and think of things in a different sense. For example, hit points are just nothing but a it is a I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Hit points aren't necessarily or don't necessarily need to be related to how much physical harm you suffer, but it could be related to how much in influence and I'm going to say forward motivation you have in terms of society, right? Like because when you're, I that gets into game design. I don't want to go down that pathway, but there's a thing in game design that once you realize how games are designed, then you can go so many different ways with it. And I think sometimes we have too much pattern recognition when it comes to game design that you have to get out of. And once you get out of it, it's pretty cool. Zamara says in D&D you can give players strongholds and followers. Hi Koval. I do have the book. I do have the strongholds and followers book from Matt Koval. Yeah. Uh, followers, skills, XP, and discounts in towns. I give out skills liberally because my PCs end up training their next characters. And that's another thing too, whether you could tie safety to places the characters build rather than places the characters travel to. So instead of there being a stronghold or a small town or a village the players can go to recoup their resources, maybe they have to build them first. And so that can be a thing. Hey, Run Right Play says, I'm so keen to do some vids, man. Lloyd and I will will crash a stream soon. Okay. No problem. Always invited, man. Always invited. It's there's an open door. I'm so zen about things. It's just ping me and you're there. So yeah, absolutely. Zamar says, bringing that back to the topic, time still passes and new badges will show up over time. Someone always has to be there to answer the call, which means someone always needs to do the training. And in a weird that's a really weird strange thing because I just saw it just dropped on Amazon, the Tomorrow War. uh Anyway, long story short, in 30 years alien monsters are going to ravage the earth and destroy all life as we know it. There's a time machine that can go back only exactly 30 years, and they need to recruit people from our present day to take them into the future to help fight this great war. All right. And the controversy is like the people in the past are dying and suffering for a war in the future, and there's argument over it. And I could imagine that while the players might be training up the next generation to defend the land, there might be people like, no, we want to relax now. Like we don't want to do that. We bring up Zamar's point about time still passes and things still move on, and someone has to answer the call. And unfortunately, humanity has an issue where if danger isn't in front of our face, we kind of ignore it. And we only panic when the danger is in front of us. Not usually when it's weeks, months, years, decades, generations away. We're kind of like, we might get hit by an asteroid, but it ain't going to be during my time, so whatever. As opposed to being prepared for it now to say, populating Mars so that humanity continues on if Earth ever gets struck by a planetoid or something like that. Paloris says Dragon's blood is now a popular drink served in the town celebrating the slaying of the dragon. That's cool. Made from spiced wine, Dragon's fire is for the more daring patrons containing strong spirits. Paloris like, there we go. It's linked to the topic. I think you just wanted to bring up alcohol. I think that's what you wanted to bring up. Yep. Unsquirrel. You can't get unsquirreled. You could just be squirreled. There's no unsquirreling around here. but in all honesty, yeah, there's always going to be the naysayers, right? The ones speaking out against what the PCs are up to. Like, yeah, we defeated the evil. The dragon's dead body is rotting back in the backfield there. Can't you see it? Surrounded by uh, you know, I don't know, ravens and infecting the land and whatnot, which I love that. I love the aftermath effects of things like that. Giant kaiju monsters that were killed, and now someone's got to cut up the meat. And of course, you've got players that are like, I'm going to make dragon armor out of the scales and all that business. Someone's like, I want to take the brain and make concoctions out of it to, give me psychic powers or something. Um, but of course, the PCs may not even be able to protect a dead body. You know what I mean? Uh, Mike says, always intend to try and set up the players as part of the setting for the next campaign. I love the idea of legacy PC creation, like their kids or the squires. The next generation looks at the current PCs and says, "Wow, like really? Wow, I want to be just like them." Yeah, absolutely. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Mike says, setting up an organic campaign world where the players' actions matter is conducive to a plausible world the players will always invest in. Slow clap on that one. Of course, of course. Letting them construct strongholds, develop businesses, or unleash new enemies means that the players will always feel important. And so much can be said about that, whether it's and sometimes it start off small, right? When the players confront the next new evil lieutenant, have that lieutenant point out those player characters by name. Hey, I've heard of you with your flaming sword. I've heard of you with your powerful magics or connections or skills or something. Hey, I know you're around here somewhere, Bard of Whispers, Monk of Shadows or something like that. I've heard of the legends spoken about your blade or something, and the PCs are like, what? Someone heard of me? And then go on from there. Maybe ballads are created, statues erected, small kids dressing in the Superman cape, running around. As a trope, pretending to be the heroes as stories are spoken about them. Heck, even have some villains just put their swords down, like, "Oh, I heard about you guys. I am not fighting you," and allow that to grow and be a major part of your setting. I think that's great because the player characters are like, "Man, I did that." Yeah, you created a religion based around yourself. You caused the I don't know the ogre that lived that was ravaging the town to give up and give back those uh, barrels of mead that he stole because they heard about your legend or whatnot. Yeah, absolutely. Zamar says, DBJ, your comment brings back my short-lived versus long-lived racism in my game, which reminds me of one of your older vids. A law made to help or protect in the past may hurt in the future. And yeah, we do that too, don't we? We as humanity. On one hand, the short term versus long term of rules and the way we act and react on things does have a great importance. An example would be, of course, we're talking fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons. Let's talk about our classic hatred of bugbears and orcs and ogres and all that kind of stuff, the goblinoids. And the larger realm of the goblinoids outside the goblinoids, like ogres and trolls and whatnot. And those are our classic enemies in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, short term, maybe there was a big war where one side hated the other. But now that the war is over, there may be laws, short term, that state that they have no rights or privileges in our civilized society. But in the long term, that's actually terrible because, what if the armies of orcs or hobgoblins or whatever were under the control of someone else? And they're like, well, we didn't want to be evil and ravage your land. We were told to. And everyone else is like, well, but you did it anyway. And yeah, all you people are bestial and evil and rapers and murderers and stuff. And they're like, no, we're not. that was them that did the thing back then. And so yeah, very very difficult when you or your family or friends have been victims of the very people that the next generation is saying we need to befriend. It is very difficult to erase that. But guess what? that's awesome storytelling moments, right? And allows us to use role playing to put ourselves in the feet of other people. Plura says the corpse thing could be a monstrous origin. Harpies could be ravens that feasted on the corpse, for example. Dire versions of things as well. Oh yeah, hell's yes. And could you could you imagine the player characters are like, okay, so we killed the dragon, right? Okay, good. Did we just make things worse? As flocks of ravens blotting out the sun, or it's like circling over the dragon's body, and the blood seeping into the land and mutating the plants, or killing the fields and whatnot, and human scavengers trying to collect ill-gotten gains from the body of these kaiju-sized monsters, or even the singular monster, where the PCs are like, okay, who stole the heart? Who stole the heart? And behind the PCs, there's someone like taking a knife trying to cut the lungs out or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I agree. And again, monstrous origins don't need to be ancient. It could just be where'd the kids go? And all of a sudden the kids were like, I don't know, like, ha ha ha, let's drink real dragon's fire or something. And all of a sudden they're mutated now. And the PCs are like, okay, we can't kill them because they were the kids in the town, but on the other hand, we need to go capture them, so we need to bring them back. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Mike says, my players are responsible for adding new playable races to my table. Ooh. These are rewards to the players who unlocked them. The player who developed a relationship with the doppelganger got first pick to play a changeling. See, I love that. I love that idea. Like, it's a perfect. I'm an old grognard, and I always hated like special snowflake characters, but given the right context, I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hell's yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Mike Gould goes on to say one player who made a deal with the succubus to portray a night hag got first picked to play Mal Malconthet, a succubus based tiefling. Ooh, we don't see. I know there's different types of tieflings, and like I said, I come from an era where tieflings were called cambions, but yeah, that's actually a great idea. These races stayed available for later players to choose. And I like the idea of unlocking something. Like a player is like, what? You mean the 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 child of my character can become this other thing, or I get to choose this other thing? It's like, yeah, that's awesome. I think, you know what? We should do a series on that. On how to say yes and no to the players, because that kind of combines the two together. And I like the idea of like, no, you can't play this thing. Yes, you can after, because of your interaction in the world, the thing becomes a choice. So yeah, you created a religion about yourself. So it's like PCs level up and you give them an extra power or magic ability or extra health. Then next session they run into the cult of PC name praying to their sword. I like that idea. PCs are like, there's another evil cult. I roll. I guess we're gonna have to kill them. And then when the PC steps into the evil cult, they're like, you are an avatar of the great god of so and so. And you're like, that's the name of my character. They're worshiping my character. They have on like handmade T-shirts and whatnot, handing out flyers at the local Dragon Airport for the PC. Oh man, Kylie says that moment when the bitter rival leaders do that forearm handshake thing. Yeah, they're. You know what? That's a trope. The forearm handshake. Yeah, you got to do the forearm handshake. It's the I've placed my sword down and I leave my arm out for you and I have to grab the bracer. And listen, you can't do a forearm handshake without like guns. Like that's just a written rule. You got to have that like the corded muscles and everything. Yeah, yeah, the forearm handshake. Yeah, ain't that a trope? Thank you, Kylie. Mike says, because of the heroic actions of one dwarf player character, there will now be a landed noble dwarf in the next campaign, as that dwarf threw himself in front of a greater noble to spare them from a dragon. Ooh, someone took a dragon to the face. That's awesome. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, Zamar mentions yes and or no but. We have to just how do you title a video with that? Like, do you do the yes and no but? Like, does everyone understand what that means? Or do you think it has to be titled differently to get the yes and no butting? Because too often I see people are like straight up no and yes, but there's that middle ground where yeah, improvisation guess, yeah. Okay. Anyway, all right, let me get you back to your comments. Mike says I had one player unleash a great old one's avatar in the world of Ember. Ooh, that meant I had to change the world map. Ooh, yeah, yeah. You release a great old one, you're just like okay, let's go into incarnate and erase, change. Oh man, Malconfets are one of my homebrew races. That's awesome. That's awesome, and it's easy to do that too. Yeah, yes and no but. That is awesome. One player piloted an extra dimensional craft, think like an illithid ship but shaped like an immense D8. Okay, through one of Thol's two moons. So now there's one moon and Thol has a ring. Ow. Ow. You know what? Letting go of our settings is that hurts so much, but you got to do it. You got to be able to do it. We're gonna have to do a week on like improvisation and the yes and no butting part of it. We'll talk about like maybe we'll do the PC wants to be a special snowflake that doesn't fit in your world. We'll do uh, setting changes. You've designed your literally your map to be a certain way, and you have to change it. Cosmologically, you might have to change things like Mike Gould is saying they destroyed a moon that's part of their world. Just being able to let go of things like that, maybe changing how magic is done, player character options, monsters, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, player actions have altered Ember and Thol forever, and I'm okay with it. And being okay with it is hard though. It's very difficult because there are babies, you know. Yeah. Mike says improvisation is the unspoken key to successful DMing. You got that right. It's I think it's the fear of it though. I think more than the I think more people are skilled in improvisation than they really think they are. I think they're better than they think they are, but it's so scary. It is truly scary, and I think that's the issue. So yeah, man, yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that next week. I think we'll do that. Mike says Julian Michaels has a great saying that applies to DMing. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Right. Because once you embrace the idea to expect the unexpected, then all the unexpected is predictable, if that makes sense. In other words, if you know your players, we all know this. Players make left turns out of the blue, period, all the time. That's just a commonality. So if you know to expect that they are not going to grab onto your hooks, then that means every other hook that you put out there and you know they're not going to do it is expected. If that makes sense, right? It's weird. It's like it's the curse of over prepping. Pelora says you get less precious about ideas when you have spares. Not much is really going to break a well-built world. Yep. And goes on to say, and even if something gets overwritten, a town gets destroyed, you could just move things around. Yeah, you're not gonna you're not gonna run out of that kind of stuff. Oh man, Kylie mentions just call that improv week. Leaves it open ended and simple to grasp. Okay, all right, maybe I will. Yep, maybe I will. You know the because we're talking about the destruction of evil in the next chapter. This this idea of improving actually the two are actually linked together more than we think they are because um like as was mentioned before, great, you've killed the dragon, and maybe as a DM you didn't even think about what would happen next, and now you're going, well, the PCs were talking about what happens to the dragon's body decomposing over a millennium over in that backfield back there, what happens next? And what a great way to start something like that. Like maybe there is a new player character option, a new race of sorts from people that have been mutated from eating the local foliage or something, or there are great dire like we never really worried about dire wolves and other dire animals, but now that they are feeding on the bugs, and the small rabbits are feeding on those bugs, and then the wolves are feeding on the rabbits, and then and they're just starting to get mutated. The PCs are like, don't why didn't we kill the dragon in another dimension or something? And so one thing leading to another, and maybe that idea never came up, after the great lich is destroyed. We're like, isn't this campaign done? Well, maybe it's not done yet. Maybe not. Mike says there's an area called the Wildstorms where the PCs broke through from the Fey file with what adds up to a domain of dread floating island. When it crashed to the ground, it created a Bermuda Triangle. Which reminds me, I can't wait for cruising to come back. Safe cruising to come back. I'm a person of a certain age. I miss it. The Wildstorms. Called the Wildstorms. This event was called Skyfall. Skyfall. This set up the next campaign. You know what? The again, the idea that the players have created a new world. I mean, heck, even in Lord of the Rings, I always imagined, great, you took out Sauron and the eye winks out and the tower falls down, and we get like those 16 great endings to that story. But what's living there now? Like there can be a great story that's the after effect of that, or all of the great nations, Gondor and all the rest of it, and Rohan and all. I mean, maybe they start to go to war with each other a certain period of time later and whatnot. Like you can tell other great stories even after the great evil's been destroyed. Zamar says, I've had my players scare a final boss from attacking them with threats of their power. I gave them XP for that, and now the final boss will come back with the power to siege the town. Yeah, yeah. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You know what? Maybe it's weird because we all understand that, but at the table, we sometimes turn that part of our brain off. And I wonder why that is. Is it just fear? Is it the we want the numbers to help us out because it creates a structure, and that part of the structure makes us a little bit afraid of moving forward when the thing in front of us, maybe it's, you know what, talking about tropes, hey kitty, talking about tropes, maybe because so many stories are told in a certain way, the recognition of those patterns makes us fall into those same patterns. So an example would be, once we kill the dragon, all the heroes raise their fists in the air, give everybody a slap on the ass, and like, good job there, get Thor or something like that, whatever. And we think we're done, but maybe the story isn't really done yet until somebody tells the next chapter. And when we see our favorite movie, and then we see part two to that great movie, we're like, oh, I didn't know there was a part two. Well, it's because someone wrote the part two. When the very first Star Wars, A New Hope, came out, long before it was even called A New Hope, we saw that movie and we thought it was all a one and done. And then number two came out, The Empire Strikes Back, and we were just like, what? There's a part two to this thing? Like, how'd they make a part two? And you realize that, well, because the story keeps going and life keeps going on, and the people in that story keep growing. Hey, when you take out the evil necromancer, there's some common zero level commoners that are like, ooh, I see what mistakes they made. I could achieve the same power, and I know exactly what to do to make sure that the same thing won't happen to me. There's always someone who's got the next great scheme, or a great evil or something. Or heck, we still have the issue of of warlock patrons hanging around, always dangling power and prestige in front of people to get that new thing. Mike says, my players tend to have the argument, kill target or make them an ally. It's true. I have two who especially think ahead on this. For players who say they don't want political gaming, they're pretty political. Yeah, you know what? Players say one thing, but they actually want something else oftentimes. And I wish we, as gamers, knew ourselves deeper than we think we know ourselves. There are murder hobos who think that they're that way, but they're not. They're like more political. And then there's the other ones that are like, I want more political intrigue. And then what the first thing that they do is they want to roll initiative and kill the thing in front of them. So yeah. Zamora says our brains are built to find simplicity from complexity. Very true. To make it easier to understand. And because of our short lifespans, we tend not to need to think past the immediate. Yeah. That's the argument for why elves who live 10 times, 100 times longer than human beings have the same skill capabilities. Because as human beings with our shorter lifespans, we're like, we need to do that thing and learn that thing right now because it will kill us soon. Whereas the elves are like, yeah, I can take time to learn that. I can let me look at this flower for 5 months and contemplate that first before I get back to doing my sword training or something, you know. So yes, absolutely, yeah, we are extremely immediate, extremely immediate. Mike says nature isn't the only thing that abhors a vacuum. Power does too. Yeah, oh yeah. I absolutely agree that like when there's a power vacuum and the players create that power vacuum. What steps in? And we could make, I think it would be pretty interesting to make strange bedfellows. Like, for example, while let's say there's some kind of nihilistic beast or monster or regime that the heroes stopped, and they stopped it from overriding the land, and boom. And now everyone looks around and there's like fiendish monsters and minotaurs and all of our classic entities are around, but maybe, just maybe, those classic evil entities aren't immediately trying to destabilize everything. Maybe they're like, you know what, we'll help you rebuild society. And the PCs are like, why should we trust you? And they're like, okay, don't trust us. Trust that we don't want society to be destroyed. Hey, a pit fiend is like, we want souls. The only way we get those souls is that we need enough opportunity for you to be your own downfall for us to get your souls. And that doesn't happen if society is completely destroyed. So, and like the gods, right? The gods need worshipers. Well, you can't have worshipers if everybody's dead. So there's a good reason for evil entities to want to help rebuild society. And what a great way for player characters to spark off of that, right? Like, that's the grognard in me doesn't like tieflings. Sorry. It bothers me a little bit, but there's actually a good reason, or we can come up with a context for a good reason why society wouldn't just murder them on, on the spot of some being born from evil. I know there's lore that explains why people don't instantly have prejudice against them, and all it would take is one generation for that not to happen, for it to go away. But it does bother me a little bit that like you literally are born from an evil entity. Why do people just accept you? And the reason for that could be that for whatever reason, maybe they helped out. Maybe the blood of fiends isn't seen in the way that an old grognard like myself would see them as, you know? And there might be a cabal of individuals that are like, I don't trust them at all. Like, yeah, I don't trust them either. What happens when they turn? They're in our midst. And the evil fiendish creatures from the lower planes are like, honestly, we actually prefer it to be that way. We want you to insert yourself into society. We don't want to destabilize it. Not yet. Mike says, an example, players saved a halfling village, but also uncovered what they thought was an inactive demonic portal. The first thing they did was tell the closest Imperial fortification about it. Result, Imperial troops and scholars moved into the halfling town, forcefully relocated the halflings, and fortified around the suspected portal. Yeah, that happens. That hey, had they not done anything, what would have happened? And the fact that they did something, what happened, right? Sometimes there's no good answers, and living with the choices and the things that happen in the world and making that a real consequence, which I think is so much different than video gaming, that we role playing, as long as we embrace consequences as players, as creators, as dungeon masters and game masters, there's nothing better. There's nothing better. Zamar says, "What happens if the world assumes that the players stepped in the vacuum, the vacuum of power?" Yeah, the PCs are. I'm just imagining them vacuuming out the area when it was first mentioned. But anyway, yeah. What happens if the world assumes that the players stepped in the vacuum of power? If the commoners assume the PCs killed the evil king to take his place? Ooh, ooh, yeah, yeah. People may assume like, hey, maybe you took out the evil lich lord because you wanted the power, or at least that's a good way to twist it. If I wanted to become mayor of the town and I wanted to get people riled up and get on my side, get them paranoid about the PCs, I don't have a magic sword or spell casting, but I sure do have a mouth. I would do that. I mean, I wouldn't do it if I was somebody that was an asshole. Anyway, Michael says the players then complained that it was unfair to the local prefect. The prefect basically said, "You told an imperial theocracy that a possible demonic invasion might happen, and now want us to not save and not save the citizens, even if they do not want to be saved." Exactly. Yeah, of course it was unfair. Yeah, the PCs complained it was unfair. Of course it was unfair. That's the whole point. The Empire will always see itself as the good guy, even if they're not. Every every empire sees itself as the good guy, no matter what they do. Uh, we we have we have a, a cornucopia of information on what happens when an empire views itself as the good guy, because they all do. Every religion, every empire, every person sees themselves as the hero, no matter what happens. And what do? We rationalize ourselves into the heroic role. I mean, sure, there are some people that martyr themselves. They're like, yeah, I know I'm bad, but I'm doing it for the good reason. But still that's a backhanded that's breaking your arm to pat yourself on the back to show you how good you are. you know so yeah, every empire, no matter what rules they have, considers themselves to be the good guys. And along with that, we like simple things. We like to it's why we have a two-party political system as opposed to like seven different political parties, because we like simplicity. It's easier to say us against them than it is to say, well, it's us. We kind of like them. We're equal terms with the others. We don't like them except when they're allied with the other one, which we like. That we don't like that complexity. We pretty much like us against them, and it's very easy to describe us against them. And especially when you can have like cools like stickers and posters and stuff like that, great outfits, that helps too. Yeah, exactly. It's the the I killed baby Hitler to save the Jews defense. Yep. And the person who rationalizes killing a child, I suppose if that were possible, you know, I'm going to go back in time, and then people are like, would you really do that? Like, would you? And then that basically makes you judge, jury, and executioner on something that hasn't happened. If you're a time traveler or whatnot, we're getting to the end here. We have unsquirreled the squirreledness back into squirreling again. So I think there is some unsquirreliness that can happen, and we'll have to practice that later on. Mike says players tend to think in modern terms. That's their context. Rarely does a player understand that the shady history of how kingdoms, empires, and like are maintained. Yeah, yeah. There's shady, and I'm not saying it's not necessary. I'm saying that yeah, there's some shady things that go on. Everything tends to come down to power and resources. It's all about control. And Yeah, players do tend to think in a modern context. It's the reason why WotC is trying to remove the for marketing reasons, trying to remove the stigma of players playing things and engaging in a world that has a problem with them. Because in a real world, we have prejudices of all types, whether it's skin tone or money or geography or religion, politics or something. There's always prejudice against. Oh, those people are fill in the blank. I don't like them because they are, and then you fill in the blank. And you know, role playing games are escapism, but I also think there's space for catharsis. There's nothing better than punching somebody in the throat that deserves it. The problem is you have to have the person be offensive enough to warrant the throat punching, and you would have to implement that in the game. And marketing wise, you kind of don't want to do that, so I get it. But on the other hand, there's something fun about doing that thing. Zamar says that's exactly why I have slavery and racism and genocide in my game. It gives the player something to fight against, but also something to be forced to understand. And it's very difficult to mechanically insert that in a game, because there are some people who will use that as an excuse to take the fun out of the purpose of gaming in the first place. There's some people who just are like, who are just want to lord it over other people. And you're a girl in my game, and women are treated a certain way, and it's like, well, that's not fun, but that used to be a thing. Wayne says, seems like the entire stream was off topic. I think modern word politics don't truly belong in a high fantasy game. Um, I think it depends on the setting, but I hear you though. I do. We all that's the alignment argument, right? Alignment doesn't work because we have a modern context of what alignment means, and the two don't fit together. So, Kaya says just because there is a history that needs to be understood doesn't merit doesn't mean oh those living have to accept it. Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's very difficult as a creator. Hey, Harry. It's very difficult as a creator to implement those things. Yeah. Yep. Politics need not be modern. Simply study the shenanigans of the War of Roses. Yeah, yeah. Thank you much there, Harry. Harry's like, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Yeah, like, share, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. We've gotten to the end here. Please, just do the duty to for the algorithms and whatnot. It's a pain in the butt, but yeah, that's it. Mm-mm-mm. Man, but that'll be a whole nother subject. Wayne says, at least not in a quasi medieval type swords and sorcery type style. Play a little versus politics in game style, but keep it light. Keep the adventuring high, fast, and hard. Yeah, it depends. And like I said, escapism, right? If we want escapism, some eh, because of things that happen in our own lives, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't let go of the things that motivate us. I can't say whether it's right or wrong, but I will say that it can be a detriment. Some people are today, like for example, we know today people are very politically trigger happy, and anything and everything that aligns with the thing that they feel strongly about is considered political. And someone's like, no, it may not be, but yeah. Yeah, Mike, when more than one person enters a room, politics happens. Yeah. All right, Z. Z's like, yeah, everyone have a wonderful day or night. Remember to fight your demons, not create them. The daemons. I know it's not pronounced that way, but I like that. Ride Eternal, Shining Croom. All right, everybody. Everyone have a great one. Please and of course, have a great day, night, evening, wherever you're at. Tomorrow is World Building Wednesday, so we've kind of already world built, but we're gonna give a great twist on this. We always do. I know at the end we kind of get a little squirrely and we talk about our own things, but That's what happens when you have a live, unscripted show. Oh man, thank you very much for that, Wayne. Yeah, hit that like button. Just share what's going on. And lastly, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Level Up 5e from N World. October 5th is the preliminary date for the when the Kickstarter starts, and I can't wait. I can't wait. I feel like it's going to be huge, like a top 5 Kickstarter, but that's just my estimation. All of the creators have been released. All the playtest material is out there. They're still doing everything. So, yep. All right. Thank you, Kylie. Kylie is like, yeah, great as always, crew. Hey, have a great one. Love you guys. I will see thee later. Bye.